This is Terry Freeman.
Jim Strickland.
Dorsey Hobson.
I'm DeAndre Brown.
Elisa Haushalter.
Funky Politics.
Funky Politics Show.
Funky Politics.
Funky Politics.
Funky Politics.
Y'all better keep listening.
Funky Politics, part of the Katsukian Network. Get the funk out the face. 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 Get the funk out the face.
You are listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Katsukian Network. In our studio this evening, we're visiting with Mike Rallings, Director of Police Services for the city of Memphis. Man, Doc Ward.
Yep.
We got the director here, man.
Yeah, because we're supposed to.
Yeah, we're supposed to.
We inform the people, so we have to bring in someone who has the most expertise in informing them, particularly about the safety challenges that we have as a city. And one thing that we were talking about was actually as far as the increase in crime across the top 65 metropolitan areas in the country, and probably the
in
other
Canada
ones
as well, too, yeah.
And Canada will, but it's probably other smaller cities that experience the uptick.
Oh, yeah.
Will. I think Jackson, Tennessee has an uptick.
Clarksdale
Has an uptick.
Yeah.
I mean, so Dyersburg,
Birmingham,
has an uptick.
God,
So
help us all.
it's happening in all those places. But one of the other things we talked about, social media being one of the attributors to that.
Yeah.
But the FBI director, James Comey, a name that we all know and we've heard quite a bit lately.
Comey.
Earlier this summer, mentioned that there was also this thing called, and it's the viral video effect.
Yes.
Where because there's so many, you're witnessing so many arrests that are taking place where officers may be trying to subdue a suspect, and there's this issue of whether or not they do it right or whether or not the force was too much force, excessive force, whatever. A lot of officers have sort of cooled down a little bit in the pursuit of their arrest. That was a theory. It's a theory that the White House, of course, has argued with them with back and forth. But I guess, would you say that's also something that really is a factor? Officers have a little bit more trepidation about pursuing criminal activity because they might get caught on video in a manner that's maybe out of context, or maybe that's in context, but definitely not without all of the other factors that people need to know.
I get to talk to officers and police chiefs and commanders from all over the nation. And I've sat down and had conversations with Director Comey. We've met Chicago, held a summit. We met in Chicago. I got to meet the police chief from Chicago. And there were a number of other chiefs there from big cities. We also met in D.C. We met in New York, and we just all left San Diego for the International Association of Chiefs of Police. And we all talk about the same thing. So police from all over the world are coming to the U.S. to talk about what's going on here. Right. So when you talk about these viral videos and how they affect police officers, at the end of the day, these officers are people. They don't want to get blasted on the news. They don't want to lose their livelihood, lose their career. And even if the officer is found to be justified, their career can be over just by the release of a viral video.
Bad context. Right.
As Director Comey stated, I think that's because we're talking about real people. Right. I think that is a true phenomenon that we've seen where officers pull back. When you see that, if you feel that you don't have the support that you need, because guess what? Old ladies call us and say, Director, you got to get these guys off the corner. Okay?
Right.
Well, guess what? If my officers go and try to get guys off the corner that result in some negative viral video,
right,
then that affects that officer's livelihood. That affects their family. That affects everything they do. So I think that's true. But you know what I'll talk about is that every day these officers go out and they put their life on the line for people they don't know. So I got to hear the police director from Orlando talk about his officers running into gunfire to rescue people that they did not know. Right. The police director from San Bernardino, same situation. Officers are running to rescue people that they did not know. Officer Verdell Smith ran toward clearing citizens that he did not know from an intersection, and was fatally, killed in the line of duty by a driver that had just shot several Memphians. Yeah, right. So that's what the officers do. And I think something else is important. My homicide guys, they go almost nonstop. They are putting it in, trying to bring closure to these families that have lost a loved one. And so think about this, 146 of these 201 homicides have been solved, meaning that they've identified a suspect, they've made an arrest, they've often they've charged or put a warrant out on these individuals.
Right.
But we need Memphians, more of our citizens stepping up to help us, contacting Crime Stoppers, working with our detectives, because you earlier talked about that you've got these things where drug dealers are robbing drug dealers. Right. We've got gang, issues going on, and they don't want to come to court. They don't want to work with the DA. They don't want to work with law enforcement. And that exasperates the problem. That creates an environment that breeds these type of things. It breeds more violence. And when people try to deliver street justice, it does not help the entire system.
You are listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukia Network. In our studio this evening, we got Mike Rallings, Director of Police Services for the City of Memphis. Director, you mentioned, and you mentioned this more than once or twice, and that's about the community involvement piece. Are we getting enough? Well, apparently we're not. I mean, I just answered my own stupid question. I was saying, are we getting enough?
Why don't you ask it?
No, I'm not going to do it because I'll be embarrassing myself on the radio.
We won't be the first time.
Well, it won't be. Well,
take a chance.
But seriously, how do we get the citizens to say, "Look, I've had enough at the corner of Tully and whatever, or I've had enough in what we used to call Old Bearwater"? Man, we're gonna do something. We're gonna make the police. If we have to stay on the phone, call them every daggum hour to come down here and get these guys off the block. We know they're selling dope.
Yeah. Well, here's the issue: is that it's just not calling the police. So let's say, and I appreciate our citizens, because each year our 911 call center, last year over 2 million calls came into our 911 call center. We were dispatched to over 1 million calls. For police service, and then our officers do self-initiated activity where they do over 1 million specials. So 2 million encounters with law enforcement every single year. But we need to do more. And here's what I tell people, what I ask them to do. I don't tell them to do anything. I ask them and say, I'm not asking you to go and talk to the young man or young woman you don't know. I'm asking you to go talk to your people.
Wow.
Your sons and daughters, your brothers and sisters, your aunt and uncle, because you know what they're doing. If they're selling drugs,
we have talked about that on the show before. We've said the same darn thing.
I want you to deal with your people.
Yeah.
And I was talking to a mother the other day, and I said, do me a favor. When these young men come in for Thanksgiving, they're going to go over whose house?
That's
They're going to go over grandmama house, mama house,
Yeah.
they'll go to auntie house.
They ain't going to girlfriend because she ain't cooking yet.
When they come in your house, if they smelling like weed, then you got to send them packing.
Yeah.
If you know they're toting guns or they got some beef going on, they're endangering your life.
That's right.
Okay, by showing up and bringing some folks that don't have any business being there. So you have to also refuse that rent money. You know what? Now you're talking about a whole nother subject of where this money is coming from. That's because right. I can only go back to my childhood. You couldn't bring nothing.
Oh no.
In my mama's house.
Not even a knife, a pocket knife.
No. I'm not talking
Boy
about
Scout pocket knife.
I'm talking about
anything. I'm talking about toys, clothes.
Oh, no.
Weapons. Right. Where did that come from?
Yeah, but where you get that from?
I didn't buy that. You go take it back where you got it from.
Sure. Even if you trade it.
That was many a day. Mine made me take. Well, I got it from outside. We'll take it back outside.
Take it back outside.
Right.
Take it back outside.
Take it back where you got it from.
Lord knows.
But I guess from my standpoint, and we're getting to this. One more time, 90% of these homicides are African American.
African American, and 100 of these victims, they knew each other. They were acquainted.
Yeah.
They were family members. And I want you to think about something. 18% of these homicides are domestic violence. These are people that should either related,
right?
Either in some type of intimate relationship that results in someone killing each other. And I'm just not talking about the men. I'm talking about
women.
Little young juvenile siblings.
Right.
I'm talking about women killing men.
Yeah. So
where's the killing women?
Where's the breakdown then? Because I can't say the breakdown is police, because if it's domestic violence, I mean, you don't know until you know. By the time you get called, whatever's happened has happened.
Well,
So what's breaking down here?
Think about the nature of homicides, though, okay? We do a lot of data-driven policing. Homicide is the toughest one to predict.
Sure.
Because, so most of the homicides are a response where we're called, we show up,
That's
we
right.
conduct an investigation. We're solving 76% of these homicides. So the homicide detectives are doing a bang-up job. It's an unfortunate situation that it has to be that way, but they're doing a bang-up job. Citizens are helping us. We need more of that. But I'm talking about how do you stop this before it gets to that point?
Right.
People are, let's talk about the state legislature before I forget.
Yes.
Because, a lot of people call me, they stop me on the street, and I say, well, you know what? I really love for you to have a conversation with your state representative because the state representatives in Tennessee have passed everything gun. So guns are several years more accessible now than they ever have been. So, I tell them just straight out, guns,
and you can carry them everywhere.
Guns in cars,
Right.
has been
Guns in bars.
There's been a terrible effect on Memphis because young men are out there carrying guns. They're accessible. I can go report that all of them almost read the same way. Argument, fight, one pulls gun, somebody's dead. Then all of a sudden, when this person is charged out, they're downtown saying, you know what, I am so sorry, I'm sad.
I didn't mean to do that.
Hey, young man, guess what?
Yeah.
You can't pull it back.
Right.
You are listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukia Network. In our studio this evening, we've got Mike Rallings, Director of Police Services with the City of Memphis. And Director, that's one thing about it. You just hit it a nail on the head. After the charge, after you're downtown, then we've seen it before. Now, a lot of TV shows, and especially I think the one, the show they had in, I can't think, what was the name of that thing?
First 48.
First 48, which showed, I know one of the mayors said it showed a negative light of Memphis, but it also showed some hellacious work being done by your department.
Yeah.
Caroline, I can remember Tony, Caroline, all those folks have been made famous, but they were doing hellified work, man.
And they are still there behind the scenes. Outside of the camera light. And a lot of people don't know that
They're doing it every day.
That show had been shot since 2008.
Yep. Wow.
It had been in Memphis in 2008. Those are old homicides that we're looking at. But you know what's sad is that I've heard Director Armstrong say it over and over again when he was a homicide detective. He'd get a call in the middle of the night, and the script would read the same.
Yeah.
There'd be a dead young African-American male, and he'd go out the next day and know that he was going to have to find and charge out another young African-American male for that homicide.
Wow. Well, I guess from solutions, you're doing a lot of things from your standpoint to try to reduce these numbers. You're doing some things with the Grizzlies and so on. Can you kind of talk about those things that you're doing as innovative steps to help us to reduce this crime rate we've got?
Well, let's talk about what we did early on because we early on recognized that the gangs were a true issue. So we re-energized the multi-agency gang unit and made a street component of the multi-agency gang unit called the Gang Response Team. And they're out hitting the streets. And, a lot of people say, I say, well, you know what we don't get credit for is for the homicides we prevented. So that's hard to measure your success when you're trying to swim upstream because your homicides have spiked up. But the gang response team is out there in the streets. They're assisting with the investigation of homicides. They're doing prevention. I spent Saturday. There was a youth symposium hosted by the city of Memphis. 200
empowerment conference.
Young men and women out there from high school, and we're spending time talking to them about it. I'm gonna tell you what troubled me. I was sitting in a classroom. We broke the men and the males and females separately, so they could really focus on the important stuff. There was a classroom about 30 young ladies, and the gang unit instructor said, "How many of you have a family member or a friend?" And they really focus on family.
Right.
That is in a gang, and almost all of those young ladies raised their hand, and they went around the room talking about Memphis gangs. I stood there with my mouth open because the you talk about the prevalence of gangs and this culture in the city is something that we all should be alarmed about. And it's going to take schools, churches, families, media, business. Everybody's going to have to really pay attention to what's going on. And we talked about 1,000 jobs in the summer youth program. We need 10,000 jobs. Right. So everybody in Memphis has to really step up. But while we're waiting on some others, we as a community, as African Americans, are going to have to really get involved in what's going on.
Who's going to drive that for African Americans?
Well, you know what? I'm going to drive as much as
I'm not
can,
asking you to do it, but who should be doing it? Who should be helping you?
Well, so who has led our community throughout its history? Well, clergy.
Yeah.
Right.
Because a lot of these are morality issues.
Sure.
Because if I got a gun in my hand and I'm sitting there looking at you, something has to talk to me from the inside and say, son, that's not right. You don't have the right to take this man's life.
That's
God
right.
did not give you that authority.
That's correct.
Okay? And, we got to go back into some of these roots and talk about, manners and loving our fellow man, loving our brothers and sisters.
Right.
Because if we don't, the consequences are too high.
You are listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazuki Network. You looked at me real funny there.
I was actually just twisting my neck.
I didn't know. I thought maybe you had a... Well, anyway.
No.
Powered by the Kazuki Network.
There's no way to look at you but funny.
Oh, wow. We're visiting this evening with Director Mike Rallings, Police Services Director for the City of Memphis.